My people, welcome to the Amos Perspective. Today we are talking about war, but not war as distant foreign news, not war as something happening far away that has nothing to do with us. No. We are talking about the kind of war that enters your transport fare, your cooking gas, your market bill, and your daily survival. Because in 2026, the conflict in the Middle East is no longer just about Iran, Israel, America, or the Gulf. It is now about Nigeria too, and it is about Abuja. It is about Lagos. It is about Kano. It is about Port Harcourt. It is about the Nigerian household. And the question is simple. How did a conflict thousands of kilometers away become a direct threat to ordinary life in Nigeria? That is what we are unpacking today. Not with panic, not with propaganda, but with clarity, patriotism, and serious Nigerian honesty. This is about oil. It is about energy. It is about inflation. It is about policy, and it is about transport. And it is about whether Nigeria can finally use crisis as a turning point instead of another excuse. Let us get into it. In late February 2026, tensions in the Middle East escalated sharply. Joint US and Israeli military operations against Iran intensified, and key Iranian oil infrastructure came under attack. Once that happened, global markets understood the danger immediately. This was no longer routine tension. This had become a real energy shock. And whenever you have an energy shock in the Middle East, the whole world pays attention, because the region remains one of the most important centers of global oil supply. At the heart of that system is the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil transit routes. A huge share of global crude passes through that narrow corridor, so once conflict threatens movement through it, traders do not wait for a full shutdown. They react to fear, uncertainty, and risk. That is exactly what happened. Shipping became riskier, insurance costs rose, freight rates jumped, supply fears spread, and oil prices moved fast. That is how war in one region becomes inflation in another. That is how missiles become market pressure. That is how geopolitics enters ordinary life. And Nigeria is now right inside that reality. As the conflict deepened, Brent crude rose sharply, climbing past major price thresholds. The market was responding to two things at once. First, fear of reduced supply. Second, a surge in the cost of moving oil around the world. Even where oil was still available, the cost of transporting it became higher and riskier. Insurance premiums rose. Shipping costs rose. That pressure moved quickly through the global energy chain. Now, for some countries, higher oil prices can sound like good news. Nigeria is an oil producer, so in theory, higher prices should mean more foreign exchange and stronger government revenue. And yes, on paper, that part is true. But this is where the Nigerian contradiction appears. Nigeria may export crude, but ordinary Nigerians are still highly exposed to international fuel price volatility. So while government may see revenue upside, citizens see higher pump prices, higher transport costs, and more hardship. The treasury may gain, the people may suffer. That is the paradox, and that is what makes this crisis so difficult. Many Nigerians are asking a fair question. If we produce oil, why should a Middle East conflict hurt us this much? Why should petrol prices in Nigeria react so sharply? The answer is simple, though painful. Producing oil is not the same thing as having energy security. For decades, Nigeria exported crude without building a truly resilient domestic energy system. That is the truth. The Dangote Refinery has improved the picture. It is a major strategic achievement and an important national asset. But this crisis has shown that local refining alone is not a full shield. Why? Because crude input is still tied to international benchmark pricing. So when global oil prices rise sharply, local refining costs also rise. That means even when refining is done inside Nigeria, the pricing reality is still influenced by the global market. So gantry prices rise. Loading slows, panic starts, queues form, transport costs climb. This is the key lesson. Nigeria cannot mistake partial progress for full protection. One refinery is important, but it is not enough to guarantee national energy resilience. Energy security needs systems, alternatives, transparency, and long-term planning. That is the real challenge before us. Now let us come to the most sensitive part of this conversation. Fuel deregulation. The government's argument is well known. Subsidy had become too expensive, too wasteful, and too corrupt to sustain. And to be fair, there is truth in that. The old subsidy system was draining public finances without building real productivity. But the ordinary Nigerian does not experience reform in theory. The ordinary Nigerian experiences it through transport fare, food prices, generator fuel, and the daily cost of survival. So when deregulation meets a global energy crisis, people do not feel policy logic first. They feel pain first. That is the political and social challenge. A reform may be economically defensible, but if there is no credible cushion around it, people experience it as punishment. So once government says it will not return to subsidy, it must also show a serious plan for protection. That means transport support, social cushioning, energy alternatives, and visible effort to reduce the burden on households. Otherwise, reform starts looking like abandonment. We must be able to say both truths together. Yes, subsidy was unsustainable. And yes, the people cannot simply be left to absorb every shock alone. That balance matters. Patriotism is not denying pain. Patriotism is demanding reforms that carry the people forward instead of crushing them. Before this latest shock, there were signs that Nigeria's macroeconomic situation might begin to stabilize. There was hope that inflation could ease gradually and that conditions might improve. Then the Middle East crisis changed the picture. Because fuel is not just another product. Fuel affects movement, and movement affects everything. Food supply, interstate commerce, construction, healthcare access, school transportation, business operations. So when petrol prices rise sharply, inflation spreads across the economy. It does not stay in one place. It moves into food, logistics, goods and services. That is why energy inflation is especially dangerous. And now the central bank faces a difficult situation. If inflation rises, policy will pressure to tighten or delay easing. But tighter financial conditions can also weaken growth and investment. So Nigeria is left walking a tightrope. At the same time, high oil prices can improve government revenue. That is the irony. The budget may benefit while the public struggles. But even that revenue gain is not guaranteed unless Nigeria can actually produce and sell at strong levels. And we know our history. Theft, vandalism, underproduction and inefficiency have often prevented us from fully benefiting from high prices. So the real question is not whether oil prices are up. The real question is whether Nigeria can turn higher prices into national stability instead of just temporary fiscal relief. That is the true test. Now let us leave the policy room and enter real life, because that is where this crisis becomes most visible. The first place most Nigerians feel fuel shock is transport. Once transport fares rise, the hardship becomes immediate. Workers spend more getting to work. Students spend more going to school. Traders spend more moving goods. Families start thinking twice before making ordinary trips. Movement becomes a financial decision. People begin to calculate everything. Can I afford this journey? Should I postpone that errand? Should I pass the cost to customers? Should I stay home? And then food prices follow. Because when transport costs rise, the cost of moving food rises too. Wholesalers adjust, retailers adjust, and the consumer meets inflation again at the market. Tomatoes, rice, yam, beans, bread, everything begins to reflect the new pressure. Then cooking gas rises too. So the household is hit from every direction. More to move, more to buy food, and more to cook. That is why fuel is not just an energy issue. It is a welfare issue, a poverty issue, a stability issue. When too much of household income goes into basic survival, people stop planning and start coping. And no country becomes great when most of its citizens are stuck in permanent coping mode. That is why this crisis feels so personal. Because it is. There have been efforts to cushion the pressure, food support programs, social interventions, some attempts to soften the impact. These steps matter, but the scale of this challenge demands something bigger. It requires coherence, speed, transparency, and visible strategy. Government cannot simply explain global market forces and stop there. No. Once citizens are carrying the cost of deregulation inside a volatile global market, leadership must become more agile and more practical. We need stronger transport relief measures. We need smarter targeting of vulnerable households. We need clearer communication. We need firmer action against artificial scarcity and market abuse. And above all, we need fast expansion of alternatives that reduce dependence on petrol. Nigeria cannot control the Middle East, but Nigeria can control how intelligently it responds. That is where real sovereignty shows itself. Now let us talk about hope. Because if Nigeria is wise, this crisis can force overdue change. Nigeria has huge natural gas reserves. That fact must now become practical national strategy. Compressed natural gas can reduce transport costs if it is scaled properly. For transport operators, it offers a cheaper alternative to petrol. For commuters, it can help bring some relief. But for CNG to make real impact, it must move beyond publicity. Conversion centers must expand. Refueling stations must grow. Standards must be enforced. Public confidence must improve. If done well, CNG can become one of the few reforms people actually feel positively in daily life. The second solution is decentralized renewable energy, especially solar and mini-grids. Too many Nigerian homes and businesses still rely on petrol and diesel for self-generation. That leaves them exposed every time fuel prices rise. But if schools, clinics, communities and small businesses get reliable solar power, that pressure reduces. Nigeria has sunlight. Nigeria has need. Nigeria has demand. What we need now is scale, financing and execution. The third solution is digital transparency. One of Nigeria's long-running problems in the fuel sector is opacity. Too much confusion, too much uncertainty, too much room for manipulation. Better digital systems can improve visibility around supply, pricing, movement and bottlenecks. That can reduce panic, reduce hoarding and build public trust. Nigeria does not just need more fuel. Nigeria needs a smarter and more transparent fuel system. This moment is teaching Nigeria something important. Energy security is national security. A country that cannot shield its people from external energy shocks remains vulnerable in deeper ways than it may admit. Its households become fragile. Its businesses become uncertain. Its politics become more tense. Its reforms become harder to sustain. Nigeria has spoken for years about diversification. But diversification must now mean resilience. Can people move affordably? Can businesses operate reliably? Can households function without being wrecked by every external shock? That is the real question. This crisis is also exposing the cost of reactive governance. The world is too unstable now for Nigeria to keep waiting until pain becomes unbearable before acting. We need anticipation. We need buffers. We need strategy. We need execution. Because this will not be the last global shock. There will be another crisis somewhere. Another supply disruption, another commodity spike. The issue is whether Nigeria will keep reacting late or finally build the systems of a serious country. So where do we go from here? First, we must be honest. The pain is real. For workers, for traders, for small businesses, for families, for the poor and vulnerable. No patriotic conversation should pretend otherwise. Second, we must stay strategic. Nigeria cannot answer every fuel shock by returning to old distortions that nearly ruined public finance. We have to move forward, but with intelligence and protection. Third, this is the time to scale what works. CNG, where it can reduce transport costs. Solar, where it can reduce generator dependence. Digital systems, where they can reduce opacity. Refining capacity, where it strengthens sovereignty. Targeted relief, where it protects the vulnerable. And finally, Nigeria must recover a deeper national mindset. One that says our gas, our sun, our engineers and our entrepreneurs should become instruments of resilience. Not just statistics in speeches. The war in the Middle East may be far from our borders, but its aftershocks have entered the Nigerian home. So the challenge before us is not only to endure the hardship, it is to learn from it, to use it, to build from it, to turn crisis into urgency, to turn pressure into reform, to turn vulnerability into resilience. Because a serious nation does not only pray for calmer seas, a serious nation builds a stronger ship. And Nigeria must become that nation. I am rooting for this country, not blindly, but seriously. Because patriotism is not noise, patriotism is clarity. Patriotism is discipline. Patriotism is demanding better systems for our people. And that is the perspective, the Amos Perspective. If this episode spoke to you, share it. If it challenged you, reflect on it. If it opened your eyes, pass it on. Because the more Nigerians understand the forces shaping daily life, the harder it becomes for shallow analysis to dominate serious national conversation. Until next time, stay informed, stay thoughtful, and stay committed to building a stronger Nigeria.